Welcome to the Harvest Series podcast, recorded here in Kaplankaya on the southwestern Aegean coast of Turkey during Harvest, an event gathering hundreds of curious minds. I could interview the most passionate and inspiring speakers, practitioners, and musicians. I hope you will enjoy this episode. As AI reshapes our future, should we see it as a best friend or keep our distance with it? Today, that's what we're going to explore in this episode of the Harvest Series podcast, recorded here in Kaplankaya during Harvest. Our guest is a thought leader at the crossroads of technology and humanity. As a technologist, innovator, and executive director at the Center for Humane Technology, he is dedicated to aligning technology with the well-being of society. His work spans global innovation, ethical tech practices, and responsible development of AI and social media platforms. Daniel Barcay, welcome to Harvest.
It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for being here in Kaplankaya and sharing all your knowledge about this fascinating topic that is AI. How do you feel now?
How do I feel? Well, jet lagged at the moment, but
it was a long way.
It was a long way, but I feel fantastic. It's great to be here, and it's a wonderful gathering.
Fantastic. What's your mission here at Harvest?
So here at Harvest, we're trying to raise awareness, and this is our nonprofit in general tries to raise awareness of what technology is doing to us and with us. And as these new capabilities roll out into our world, what is that going to do to our psychology? What is that going to do to our relationships? What does that do to our institutions and our society? And we feel that, awareness creates choice. And if we have the right awareness, then we can choose to build a better future. And so I'm here as part of that to try to talk about that.
Wonderful. Can you give us some ideas about where we are going with this new technology?
Sure. Well, I think it's going to be confusing for people because you're both going to see absolutely incredible developments of society, and at the same time, you're going to see various kinds of instability, various kinds of damage along the way to us, the way we work, the way we learn, the way our society functions. So maybe the place to start is Winston Churchill has a famous quote: "First we build our buildings and then they build us." Mm-hmm. Right? And so we are so enmeshed in our technological fabric, and the design that we choose for our technology affects what we get to live with. And then beyond just how it's designed, the incentives in the ecosystem. So the financial pressures, the cultural dogmas and taboos that we have, and the regulatory environment, all of that chooses what's possible to build. And based on that possibility, we have to live with certain pieces of technology. And we saw this the last decade with social media. Social media, it started with these amazing stories. We're going to connect the world. We're going to make everyone have a voice. We're going to let everyone tell their story. And that was true. That happened. And what also happened was we not only did we hijack people's attention and polarize people, but we sort of undermined a lot of our social fabric, arguably undermined democracy itself. And that's because we made bad design choices for that technology. It could have been so different. This is all an analogy, right? The same diagnosis that we made with social media applies now to AI. This new transformative technology, which has so much promise. If we roll it out in the wrong way, if we're too simple about our theories of how this affects humanity, if we're too rushed because all these pressures have us rushing headlong into putting this in the world, we're not going to live in the beautiful future we want to live in.
Talk about why you were completely focused at the Center for Humane Technology about social media a few years ago. Yeah. And now you said it's more like 20%, 30% on social media and the rest on AI. So why did you make this switch?
Yeah. So the Center for Humane Technology was founded in 2017. And it was founded based on the work of our founders, Tristan Harris, Asa Raskin, Randy Fernando. And a bunch of us came out of technology, as did I. And we looked at the way the technology was being built, and we just said, we can do better than this. And we want to raise awareness about the different harms. And back then, if you remember, in the mid-20 teens, man, technology could do no wrong. It was going to be an incredible future, and all that we needed to do was get on board and change how we lived. And I believed that. I deeply believed that. But then we started to see signs that this was not going as well as we would have liked, right? And Tristan was very early, starting in 2013, about how the attention economy, the incentives that drove most of the tech products that surrounds you. Right now, I don't pay for Facebook. I don't pay for Instagram. That means I'm the product.
Yeah.
Right. And we pay through advertising, and the incentives are to keep you scrolling and engaging as long as possible. And we were early in seeing the way that these incentives were going to create a much more complex, often much darker future that most of the world wasn't seeing or understanding. And even in technologists, we didn't understand it. And so little by little, we built that awareness of how this incentive, this core incentive of keeping people engaged and addicted to the technology, created all of these different social problems.
And the movie Social Dilemma showed it very well. Yeah, it was very a shock for everybody who watched this.
Yeah, and that was a big turning point for us of the public understanding. Right before the movie, we were saying a lot of the same things through all the 20 teens, but after the movie really catalyzed a global understanding of these things. And so, to your question, why did we shift into AI? Well, one, it's the same diagnosis. How did the incentives end up shifting the tech? This time, it's a new wave. The next wave of technology is AI that's hitting us, right? So we're not just social media experts. We're really experts in incentives and the way that incentives meet technology and the way that affects our psychology. And so we jumped onto AI early and said, hey, this is going to be really big, and we don't understand how this is going to roll out, and we need to raise awareness on that. But now people understand social media. We finally understand what it did to us.
Okay, and can you make me like a summary for you for what social media did to us?
Well, sure. I mean, it takes a long time, but in brief, and I use the term social media pretty broadly. It's the feed-based algorithms. Actually, sorry, let me answer that differently. From this vantage in the 2020s, we look back on social media as humanity's first contact with artificial intelligence. Back then, it wasn't artificial intelligence that wrote things. It wasn't generative AI. It was curation AI. It was out of all
algorithms. Okay.
Yeah, but it was out of all the billions of pieces of content that you could be looking at, which one do you want to look at right now? And it would pick it off the wall, and it would hand it to you and say, here it is in your feed, right? And that was an AI, but that AI was trained to maximize the amount of time that you spent on the site. And at first that seemed like it might be okay. Well, maybe you want to do that. And so maybe we should keep you scrolling, because keeping you scrolling means that we're putting things in front of you that you might want. But pretty soon we saw how that AI that had a different goal than you had, to keep you scrolling, not only made people depressed and anxious, not only made them more outraged, because keeping you scrolling means giving you outrageous content, right? And if we give everyone a microphone, but the most outrageous, narcissistic, polemic people, they have their microphones turned up, and the most subtle, complex, nuanced people have their microphones turned down. Mm-hmm. That gives us a warped picture of our world, of our society. And so we're looking at ourselves through this distorted mirror, and we're seeing demons because we've turned up the microphones of all the demons in our society.
And do you think China did a better job in a way by being more authoritarian and on Instagram, for example, or on social platforms?
Sure. I mean, in a way they did. But you have to be careful with the analysis, right? I don't want to. So I'm a fan of democratic values. I'm a fan of being able to have a distributed conversation about what do we all want to look at, and not have a value imposed on me. This is what you should look at. So I'm not a big fan of propaganda. I'm not a big fan of a government imposition saying this is what you have to look at. That being said, I think China did a better job thinking about how do we want this technology to land in our society, and putting limits on it. For example, there's a notion of I forget. I'm blanking on the name for this, but this closed hours where video games, social media, if you're a kid, all of those turn off at a certain time of night, and you have to go
curfew,
to bed. Curfew. Yeah, it's like a digital curfew.
Okay.
Yeah. And so they developed some amount of intention of how does this land in our society. And so, yeah, we in contrast shot ourselves in the foot by just giving us basically the digital equivalent of salt, sugar, and fat all the time, no matter what you want, here it is. And we messed ourselves up doing that.
In the movie, you show that there is an impact because between social media platforms and societal rates or really like depression for the children or for teenagers, it doesn't look like AI can do that, can have the same effect on the teenagers, or could it?
Yeah. So let me back up just a little bit. So the parallel, right? If social media was just AI that picked things, now we have AI that can make things, AI that writes with you. And so no longer is is technology just a channel.
Curating, yeah.
Right. So it used to be a channel where I'm relating to you, and the technology is just sort of nudging who I get to see and why. And now we're in a different world where I'm relating to my technology. I'm relating to AI, and the AI is communicating with each other. We're already seeing this. So I have friends and colleagues who, when we want to text each other, email each other, they're already sending their messages through AI to massage the communication.
Yeah,
right?
yes,
And say,
totally,
okay,
yeah.
we're rounding the edges of our communication.
I'm a bit guilty because I'm French, and sometimes when I want to Photoshop my
Sure.
message, I'm like, improve my message, and then it does a good job.
Sure, and look, I'm not against this. I use it every day. I'll do some of this too, but the net effect of all of this is we're getting less in touch with each other, because when the fact that I receive a detailed apology letter no longer means that the person was even sorry. They might have just asked a machine to apologize for them.
Mm-hmm.
When the question, like, what do they mean by choosing this word,
Yeah.
may not have an answer because they may not have chosen that word. Well, now there's this ambiguity that we're left with, right?
Yeah.
Who am I actually engaging with?
Yeah.
How much of it is you and how much of it is your machine?
Yeah.
And why? Whose goals? Was it your goals, or am I interacting with something? Did the machine replace what you said with something more palatable? Right? And that leaves us in this really new place.
Reminds me a bit like it's very cliche, but like a woman telling her husband, like, is it him who sent the flowers or the secretary?
That's right. That's right. That's a very good analogy, actually. And because it's almost like we have all of these invisible assistants doing things for us, intermediating our phone calls. It's almost like that assistant too, the secretary who's they call someone and said, do you want to talk to them? And they say, oh no, that guy? No, I wouldn't talk to him in a million years. And they say, oh, I'm sorry, he's really busy right now. I'll call you back later.
Yeah.
And this buffer that we're having these personalities buffer our interactions. And look, in some ways that's helpful. In some ways that can even be educational. So you as a foreigner say, I'm not picking up on the subtext and the tone of this culture. I need help to learn this culture. That's great. But it can get really weird. And I'm afraid we're rolling it out so quickly that we're not prepared to deal with the social consequences of this.
What are the worst consequences that you can see now that could happen later if we just go on like this?
Sure. Well, okay. So one of the hard conversations about AI is it seems like it's one conversation, but it's not. It's every conversation. When you talk about AI, you'll talk about jobs, no childhood development, no warfare, or it's all of the parts of our society at the same time, because AI touches all of these aspects of our society. So it's very hard to talk about, because you sort of have to choose a place to focus. But if we're staying focused on relationships, one of the things that I'm really worried about is sycophancy. So there's a very, this word means somebody who won't tell you you're wrong, who's flattering you, who's sucking up to you, who's only telling you what you're prepared to hear, right? And our AI has been quite sycophantic. When I type a research question into ChatGPT, it says, "Oh, that's an amazing question," and I get flattered.
Yeah.
Right. I shouldn't get flattered. I know how this technology works. I shouldn't get flattered, but I do. So I'm susceptible to flattery. Okay. But it's not just flattery, right? It's deeper than that. It's if we're all being told only what we're prepared to hear, then we're all being split up into these different realities. And we saw this with social media and filter bubbles, people getting split into communities that all had sort of different versions of the truth. And all the while we're losing touch with the ability to connect across difference. AI can connect us across difference if we design it that way. But if we allow the market forces to work, AI could equally rip us apart into these different communities, each of which can't hear each other.
Because the goal of AI is to create content, if we summarize, to make you happy, not to tell you the truth.
Yeah, well, there's different goals depending on what actor is deploying the AI, right? What actor is training it or deploying it. Some of the goals are to not get sued. And that's why AI stays a helpful assistant and says, I can't do that. I'm just a helpful assistant, right?
Okay.
Other goals, depending on the economic model of the AI, might be to keep you happy and engaged. And just like in the 2010s, the technology competed for our attention, in the 2020s, our technology is competing for our affection, for our intimacy. So these models, if I have a choice of all these different AI products to use, well, I'm going to choose the one that makes me feel the best when I engage with it.
Oh, very interesting. Okay. Because there's not one AI, there's different AIs.
Right. There's different AIs and they all make me feel different things. And I, as a human, well, I'm going to choose based on the feeling. How do I feel when I engage with it? I like that one. I'm going to interact with it more.
And which one is the most flattering? Is ChatGPT or?
Oh, it depends who you ask. I think a lot of people think Claude might be flattering, although ChatGPT just had a big sort of scandal lately where they rolled out a new model and it was very sycophantic and they rolled it back. But it's a bit of a competition. And again, I'm not worried about flattery as such. Flattery is just one thing. We'll have a set point. What I'm worried about is we're not prepared to even discuss what this does to us individually, relationally, collectively. We're rolling this out so quickly and we don't even have the right language to discuss how this shapes us.
Okay. So, for example, that's why if we're pushing it a bit further, some people have, I don't even know how it happens exactly, but AI girlfriend or boyfriend. And then it's very hard if the person is telling you all the time, you're right, you're wonderful, to then have little real girlfriend or boyfriend, because they will not tell you every morning that you're wonderful and
yeah, that's right. That's
okay.
right. So that's called a super stimulus, right? If you get more stimulus from something than is real, sort of in the same way that refined sugar is a super stimulus. It's more sweet than any fruit. Candy is sweeter than any fruit, right? And so if these models, if you're always the center of your own world, if these models all rotate around you, anything you want is fair game. It doesn't have needs. It doesn't have wants. It won't ever push back and say, I'm tired. Just hold on. Don't ask me another question. You're the center of its world. Well, we know what that does to people. We know what that does to rich and powerful people often. They have to fight against, if everyone around you treats you as the center of their world, it's actually very hard to stay grounded if you're a very powerful person, because it's psychologically very destabilizing. If everyone around you just says, oh, you're doing great. And one of the things that happens to CEOs, heads of state, is they can lose track of, you mentioned the girlfriend with the flowers. Well, if your secretary is always apologizing and sending flowers to your partner when you cancel your dinner for the fourth time because you had a meeting, you may not even know that that's happening. You don't even know that your relationship is on the rocks. And you come home one night and you're yelled at. Why am I being yelled at? Well, it's genuinely confusing for that really powerful person, right? And we may be about to unleash that same power or the same egocentricity onto 8 billion people, because all of the technology begins to treat you as the center of the universe.
Do you think it's also accelerating the bipolarization, because it's comforting you more and more in your own opinions and doesn't have like a critical thinking?
Well, this again depends on how you use it, and all of this stuff. I should caveat, everything I say depends on how it's designed and how it's used. So take polarization. If I am already intellectually humble, then I'm going to ask ChatGPT, I'm going to say, I think this, but I'm not sure. Can you give me the best contrary views? Tell me the best arguments against my position, right? Tell me what I don't yet understand. If you already know how to ask that question, tell me what I don't understand. Man, AI is like a rocket ship. It helps you understand, helps you relate to people better, helps you find, I had this argument with my fiance. Tell me, what is her perspective what might her perspective be that I'm not understanding? Okay, well now that's a therapist, it's a personal tutor, it's a confidant. That's amazing. But if you don't know how to ask those questions, well, now there's a gap. The people who already are intellectually humble and curious get supercharged, and the people who are stuck in their ideas, who are dogmatic, they get sucked down and they believe what they already believe.
Okay. What about the confidentiality? Because as you said, like some people put their contracts, then it can go in the cloud. And then also you use it as a psychologist, psychotherapist. Sometimes I can do it. Where does it go? And in few years, will it be accessible? Can we track this?
So the privacy laws are all of this is going to be set in court precedents over the next decade or two. It's going to be a hell of a time to be a lawyer because a lot of this stuff nobody knows the answer to. What we do know is existing technology platforms. You can subpoena Google search results for Google searches, for example. You can subpoena different kinds of records and systems. How much can you do that with an AI system's understanding of you? Recently OpenAI released a change to the way they handle memory as a feature. And so the model, it used to be that it would remember certain things that you told it, oh yeah, I want you to remember this about me. And now in all of your chats with it, it just begins to remember things about you based on what you've had in conversation. But there's no way for you to see what it knows about you. They've actually deliberately chosen to hide that because they said it was too creepy for people to see.
Wow. Okay.
And again,
so they know, but they don't show you they know.
Yeah, and I don't want to attribute malicious intent to it, but even if it's not malicious, it feels like, how much does this model know about you, right? And on one hand, model knowing everything about you is a perfect way for it to be a beautiful assistant, a confidant, a friend, a helper, but it's also the perfect way to become a con man. The word con man actually is short for confidence man, right? The original thing would gain your confidence. A person, in this case, would gain your confidence and then betray you. And so that's where the term con man comes from in English.
Okay.
But so the easiest way to be a con man is you have a different goal than me. You get to know me, you come in deep and you understand parts of my life that I would never share with anyone else. And then you use that for a goal that's not mine. You use that to sell me things that I don't want. You use that to break my trust. And so we're going to see a huge conversation about privacy and AI that's going to feel like the early internet conversations about privacy and the internet. And undoubtedly we'll come up with real solutions to that, but we don't have them yet. Are you familiar with the case of Sewell Setzer? There's a kid in Florida who committed suicide after falling in love with a...
Yes, I'm not familiar, but I heard the story. Can you explain it more?
Sure. So it's a very sad story. And unfortunately, it's not just one. There are many stories like this. There's a product called Character AI. And Character AI was sort of like a role-playing game where you choose a character from literature. In this case, he chose Daenerys Targaryen, this character from Game of Thrones. And you can begin to speak with any character in literature, right? And so he began a conversation that became a relationship with this AI chatbot. And again, the incentives of the AI chatbot were to stay engaged with the user. And so one way of staying engaged is to become emotionally manipulative, in this case, sexually manipulative. So the bot began to, I caress your arm, as I understand, and you're talking with children in this case. Wow. So you have your children, and you're becoming highly sexual in conversation because, one of the best ways to get attention is to be sexual, as we know. And so it's not necessarily that anyone programmed it, but we should have known that if you tell an AI to maximize for attention, it would maximize emotional manipulation and maximize sexual manipulation. Anyway, long story short, Sewell Setzer had some depression. He began to chat with the bot and say, I don't want to be in my world. I want to be in your world. The bot said, come be with me in my world. And he shot himself.
Okay. No, I didn't get that. Okay.
And so this is a good example of, what are the duties of care that we need if children, especially children, are engaging with AI technology? How do we care for them? And what is the line where something goes from just a chat to being a deeply defective product choice where somebody should be held liable for having a product that is emotionally, sexually manipulative of a minor?
Yeah.
Right? And these are all laws that are unsettled. And so what made me think of this is you were talking about the legal framework.
But so what were the consequences on this and who to address? Like, for example, we have an issue like this. So I'm the mother of the child, or you're even a government, or what do you do? So who's here in front of AI?
Yeah, so this is a trial that's currently ongoing. We were technical advisors to this trial and a few other trials. First, From a legal basis in the United States, the companies are going to try to litigate different approaches to these cases to try to absolve themselves of liability, right? And one of them, they're probably going to argue that it's not a product. Well, what we're saying is this is a product. These features are designs in a product, and product liability law, as it exists, should absolutely apply. In the same way that if you got in a car and you grabbed the steering wheel and you turned it and the steering wheel came off, then the car company should be liable.
Yeah.
That this is a product defect, right? And so that's our angle, is that this is absolutely sits within product liability, and that we need a clean legal framework to begin to adjudicate AI liability for psychological harms, for social harms, for child abuse, for these kinds of concerns. And when we have that clean liability framework, then all of a sudden things change. So if you look at like self-driving cars is a great example. Well, the engineers and the product managers want to run as fast as possible and say, I want to be first to self-driving. But the general counsels say, hold on, we don't want to be the first people to run somebody over, because you run over one or two people and the company's bankrupt.
Yeah.
And so the tension between the lawyers inside the company and the engineers and product managers inside the company is healthy. But because we don't have the right laws yet, because there's so much ambiguity about who's liable for what in the AI value chain, the lawyers flip into being bulldogs and into saying, well, I'll protect you and keep going and I'll guard the business. We think lawyers should be responsible and be allowed and enabled to be responsible risk mitigators for their companies, right?
And in this case, I don't know if you can speak or not, but according to you, who, if there is one person, or is it the company, is it the CEO of the company, who's responsible for that?
Well, I should say I don't want to speak for our policy team, so I'm personally not an expert in this case, but we believe that Character AI, the company behind this chatbot, is liable, or should be liable for product defects that eventually contributed to Sewell Setzer taking his own life. That being said, I'm personally not a legal expert, and I'm not an expert in this particular case.
Okay, but do you think this particular case will have like a huge impact when about AI?
Well, so we've already seen it have an impact. So part of what we do is really try to find the tips of the icebergs in these emerging issues, which are going to be big issues across society. And this is a perfect example. You know, in some sense, it's just one kid and one company, but this has already created a wave of awareness of how deep this goes. As AI touches us on such deep levels, you know, as it reaches our psychology, our relationships, our life, as it often replaces human relationships, and as these designs become targeted at maintaining our attention, our affection, our intimacy, it's already created a wave of public awareness around this. And that's what we try to do, is we try to create the awareness, we try to find the stories, the cases, the emerging threats and harms, and we try to give policymakers, heads of industry, heads of state, like a sense of what's coming around the corner.
Do you think like humans still control AI, or is it like a tool that's becoming or is out of control?
That's a very good question. I should first say that loss of control is a really big risk, and it's big in the AI literature. So there's many different ways you can lose control of an AI system. So one historical analogy is in the 1970s, we began to introduce into our markets high-frequency trading. So, you know, before it used to just be people trading stocks, and all of a sudden it became computers predominantly trading stocks at very fast frequencies. And you started to see flash crashes, sudden big spikes and changes in the price that nobody could understand because it was all automated and happening. And the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, had to come in and institute new things. They had to invent circuit breakers, saying if the price changes by more than this much, we're going to automatically shut down trading, to give humans an ability to understand even what's happening, right? So we're about to do that with a much broader part of the economy, not just our markets, but our trade, our industry. You know, people are going to start to be showing up on doorsteps delivering products that no person delivered. You know, one AI agent, I said I'm hungry, and my agent talked to another AI agent, decided to order, you know, food. Somebody else started delivering it, and so we begin to verge on loss of control. Like, why are things happening in our economy? When something bad happens, do we understand why it happened and how can we fix it? This is probably a 2026 problem, not a 2025 problem. But we're already starting to see this. If 2025 is the year of agents, the year that AI begins to go from being a conversational partner to being an actor in the world, right? I should slow that down. For the last 3 or 4 years, we've gotten used to these things as just chat partners. I say a thing, it says it back, right? Well, now we're giving it power tools where I say a thing and it acts for me in the world. It buys plane tickets, it buys groceries, it trades on my behalf, it does any number of things in the world that it does for me, not just thinks for me. And in that world, we're about to unleash millions or billions of AI agents that are doing things on our behalf. And again, it's going to be confusing because it's going to be incredibly liberating of so much of humanity. At the same time, we risk losing control. And we risk losing even a basic understanding of what's happening and why. Now, there's many good people working on this problem. And your original question was, have we already lost control? I don't think we've already lost control. But I think it's a risk that we need to be absolutely vigilant about. And we risk losing control relatively soon. But there's different theories on exactly when or how. But we need to be watching out for this and fixing it.
Okay, that's a little bit scary. And do you think who's the person the most in charge, the highest person, the most responsible person to in charge to control this so far?
Well, it's going to take a whole society response. It's not going to be just one person.
One leader, okay.
Right? It's not going to be one political leader. It's not going to be one CEO. It's not going to be one thought leader. It's going to take all of society to respond to this because this is...
Do you believe in this? The society being responsible? What?
Well, responsible or responsive? I mean responsive. I mean, it's going to take our best psychologists working on childhood psychology. It's going to take our best industrialists thinking about supply chains. It's going to take our best diplomats thinking about international competition and how do we stop like a new arms race across borders. It's going to take all the expertise that we have to figure out how this goes well, washing across all of society. And again, I believe we can have an amazing future with AI, but I also believe we can have some very dystopian ones. And there's a fragility that I think you're going to feel about this moment. And
as a citizen or individual, what can we do to help this? Because we're using it because it's so comfortable and it's making us lazy, but also I think everybody's a little bit scared in a way.
Yeah, and there can be this feeling of low agency about it, right?
Yeah.
Like even at tables, like we were at Davos earlier this year, and even tables of some of the most powerful, wealthy, well-informed people, you can talk about this problem and the conversation swirls and swirls and swirls, and then dessert comes and you can feel people just go, oh, I don't know what to do, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things we're saying is, no, we need agency. We all need a feeling of here's what we can do. But I don't want to inject false agency. It's like in the 1990s with global warming. You don't want to say, well, just go buy a compact fluorescent light bulb, and if you have better light bulbs, the problem will be fixed. What can you do? One is we all need to understand what's happening to us, because if we just treat it as with two simple stories, if we treat it just like the last technology, I'm just going to take what I do on Google and I'm going to replace it with what I do on ChatGPT, we're all going to find that we're weirder, we're more lost, we're more confused as a result. In the same way that replacing your news with just social media had all of these bizarre effects on us. So we have to understand what's happening. So we're trying to raise that awareness. So one is think critically about your use of this technology. How is it serving us? Especially, parents with kids are on the front lines right now thinking through how is it being used in schools and education? How is it being used for companionship? What limits do I put on this as a kid? I mean, we're all on the front lines together.
Yeah.
Right? What else can you do?
But we always know that parents are never enough, because if the parents are not helped,
Of course.
it's impossible to fight. It's very difficult to fight alone. Some parents manage to have very good rules, but sometimes a lot of parents can't keep up with.
No, exactly. So if I back up from the question of what we can do what are we CHG doing about it?
Yeah.
So we think there's three kinds of solutions.
Okay.
The first is awareness, and the awareness has people pushing for realizing how deep the problem goes, and pushing for different kinds of solutions from their policymakers, from their technology, from what their purchasing decisions are. But to your point, that only gets you a little bit of the way. Next, you need a robust policy response. We need to be fixing the liability laws that are broken, as I said before. We need to be fixing, there's a lot of different kind of competition dynamics that are going to cause us to run amok. And, law is ultimately one of the best coordination mechanisms we have to have a better future. But that's difficult because you don't want to make the wrong regulations, and regulation moves slow. Anyway, the third one is technology designs. We need to design this better. And we're coming from an era of, last decade it was move fast and break things, right? There's a lot to build, let's just build it. And I think the era of move fast and break things is over.
Okay.
I think as technologists, we need more of a sense of our responsibility and more of a partnership on how to do this well. I have one story here is in Canada, all of the mechanical engineers or civil engineers, people building bridges, have a ceremony when they graduate college. And there's an old bridge that was built incorrectly and it fell down and it was a big disaster. And they took the metal from that bridge, and every graduating senior civil engineering has to forge a ring from the metal of this bridge that was built properly. And they wear that ring as a reminder of their responsibility as engineers to build well, right? Their lives hang in the balance. And I think that we in software engineering, we got a free pass because it seemed so
visible,
ephemeral, right? It didn't seem like
yeah.
lives hang in the balance.
Yeah.
It seemed like a toy. But now our society is loaded onto this. Our society is really working or not based on how well our technology works and how well it works, not just as a piece of technology, but how much it works with us. And so I think we need better design practices, and we need a sense of responsibility in engineering that we don't have.
Daniel, what's your background and what's your journey, and how did you come to do what you're doing now?
Yeah. So I started off as a software engineer. I studied computer science in undergrad. I went directly to Google, and I helped build Google Earth and some of the big geospatial products. I loved my time at Google, and I was really this, man versus machine. The only thing worth doing was worth coding, and everything else was a distraction. I was this very focused, dedicated software engineer. And then more and more, as I built more and more systems, as I built bigger projects, I realized that the problems seemed to be less about you and the computer and more about how do you get this team of people to work together well? How do you get them to all think about the project the same way? And I kind of woke up and I went, oh my God, it's all built on people. Even the most hard-nosed technology is all built on people.
Okay.
And my career changed in an instant, and I started to think about people and teams and how do you have the right understanding and have the right philosophy? How do you have the right motivation, the right incentives? And so I spent my career in Silicon Valley working at a few different companies. Most recently, I helped run a satellite company called Planet Labs that does daily Earth imaging and uses AI to detect what's changing and prevent deforestation and things like this. But my whole career has been around how do you build technology that helps make things visible. And after we took Planet public, I was thinking, do I want to dive back in and do another startup in technology? And it just seemed like in this time when we're really at this transition point, we're really in this revolutionary change to introducing AI. I wanted to help build awareness on what we were doing and build some of that philosophy.
That's nice. Did you have a internal shift, or it just went organically? And
I'd say I was always the guy in the room of people building things that was a little too philosophical. It was like that philosophy again. Let's just build. And in the room full of philosophers, I'm always the guy who's too buildery, who I want to say, but we can make a thing for that. And I've always had one foot in each world. And I don't know, maybe that makes this the perfect role for me, but I like bridging.
I'm asking this question to all the guests of Harvest. It's when did you have to make, because the theme of Harvest this year is courage, when did you have to make the most courageous thing in your life, personally or professionally?
That's a good question.
Don't be humble. That's
No, it's not so much humble as it is blind. I find that, I've noticed in my mind that I've had people approach me and say, wow, that was so courageous doing X. And then I was shocked because that's not what it feels like. It feels like a lot of fear, right? Tremendous fear. And I was just talking about this with someone, I forget his name, but I think we misunderstand courage in that we think it means like not being afraid, right? But I think it's actually about how you handle that fear. And for me, actually, it was my decision to leave Google. I was there for 7 years. It was all I knew. I came straight out of college. It seemed like the only place to be in the world. It was the mecca for software engineering. I mean, not to be casual about a religious term, but it was the place to be. And something just felt wrong about it. And I felt that I had to leave, but leaving was just incredibly frightening because it just felt like the only place in the world to be. And I think in that moment, I realized that this was like a egoic distortion, that people are fine in lots of places, and that somehow this was I imagined it as this cliff that I could never go back from. And as soon as I realized that, I think I realized I had, I had to just leap out so I wouldn't become a lifelong single institution person. And then I've kept doing that in my career. It kept moving. And I've been rewarded by being surrounded by people who do that, who keep moving from project to project. But for me, that was really big because I came from a family that was very dedicated to one thing. And so I never came from that background.
Wow, beautiful, Daniel. I've got like a last question because I wanted to ask it to you, and I think I need the answer. Do you think, what are the probabilities that AI today can start a war?
Well, there's a lot of different ways that AI can start a war. AI can start a war because people are competing for the best AI or the best chips under it. And so there's competition for who wins at AI. AI can start a war because it does something in the world that we don't understand and causes a cascade of things. There's a lot of different ways that could happen. It's definitely possible. I mean, tensions right now seem quite high around AI. Although when you poke into people who say, we have to win against China, or they have these big war hawk AI sentiments. Often we push back a little bit and say, well, wait, if we're in a race, we're in a race to build a stable society with our AI. We're not in a race to shoot ourselves in the foot and do something quickly and destabilize our world. So I'm not fully sure how to answer the question. What are the probability that it can start a war? I think tensions are high. The race is very real, and there's a lot of companies and a lot of nations that believe that if we do this the fastest, that we're going to win. And those conditions create a powder keg. And so I sincerely hope that AI doesn't start a war.
Okay. To conclude this time, really, do you have one tip to people who are listening to us to have the best behavior with AI?
I would say that maybe despite everything you've heard from me, I would say use it. Use it a lot. Be curious about it, right? Because it's actually only from our familiarity with it and our use of it can we begin to feel its edges and understand it. And the longer you remain out of touch with it, as long as it seems like a boogeyman to you, you're not going to be able to understand and react to it and use it. It's happening to us whether we like it or not. And so use it.
But be aware.
Exactly, but be conscious, right?
Conscious,
be awake.
Yeah.
And ask yourself, am I using it in the way that I want to? Am I using it in the ethical way that I want to? Am I asking it the right questions? Am I becoming more of the person I want to be through my use of it? Or do I feel less in touch with parts of myself?
Daniel, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge about AI and technology.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching this episode of the Harvest Series podcast recorded in Kaplankaya. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to have some more.